I'm delighted to be here today with Stephen Bell, General Manager, Pashley Cycles, Britain's longest established bicycle manufacturer here in Stratford-upon-Avon, and I'm joined by Simon Topman, Chief Executive of Acme Whistles, manufacturer of whistles based in Birmingham. And we're here today to talk a little bit about Pashley Cycles, how you've survived, established in 1926, and something about the journey that your bicycle manufacturing operations here have been through. Stephen, you've recently joined the business. You've been here about a year now. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself and what it's been like for you as general manager of this business, coming from another bicycle manufacturer, and what have been your immediate impressions coming here?
Well, Pashley is a very special business. Some people call it a jewel, but it really is very, very special, very different. It is one of only 3 businesses left in the UK that really do only manufacture British bicycles. And the important thing about Pashley is that it is recognised quite widely around the world as a manufacturer. And what we do here is we produce products which people really do desire. These aren't just ordinary bicycles. These are very, very special products. And because of that, we're able to occupy quite a premium niche, certainly within the UK and definitely around the world in particular markets. Our biggest markets are the USA and the Far East. We do have distribution in Europe, but it's a lot more difficult and a lot more competitive in those areas because they've got their own little niche premium products.
You mentioned you've been working for another bicycle operation in the UK, but an importer and more of a mass market operation. So can you tell us about coming to a specialist premium brand like Pashley? What are the real overriding differences or things that stand out in your mind?
The bicycle industry in the UK has been through tremendous change. 40 years ago, there were over 100 manufacturers of bicycles in the UK. That now is down to numbers that are less than 3. It's very, very small. And the numbers are very small. We're no longer an exporter of volumes of bicycles. And I was from a business that was involved in mass market. We were manufacturing for many years, but unfortunately, as prices dropped because of competition, we had to import products ourselves. And so the business became design and marketing, basically, and importing from many countries around the world. Coming to Pashley was really quite exciting because the business is very carefully manufacturing products and making frames that left that area of manufacture left the UK maybe 15 years ago because whereas most people were saying that they were manufacturing bikes, they were still importing frames from the Far East. So we manufacture everything within the bicycle. We do import products from the UK and Europe to where we can't get the components ourselves, but the important thing is the product is put together, built from the ground up in Stratford-on-Avon.
Designed and hand-built here in Stratford-upon-Avon.
Yeah.
Well, we've been considering the progress of British manufacturing in recent years, but obviously prior to the recent renaissance of British manufacturing, we've had a very tough time here as British manufacturers. And Simon Topman, you've been making whistles in Birmingham for, personally involved in the Acme whistle business for over 30 years. Can you talk a little bit about why you think we've had this recent revival in parts of British manufacturing, and what is it that's been driving that, in your opinion?
I'm sure that some of it, at least, is down to the world generally demanding, and a big proportion of the world demanding, better quality products, special and unique products, and wanting to do more than just buy a product anymore, not just something that will get you to work or referee a football match in my case, but actually have something that they can love and enjoy owning. I certainly think from my own point of view, when has anybody ever bought anything that was true quality and not come to love it? And would you not say that's the same about bicycles? Yeah. But there must have been a point, I'm sure. I know you're a newcomer to Pashley. I'm very curious to know how you're still here and what's driven that, because although it was perhaps before your time, there must have been points when somebody at Pashley sat down and thought, isn't it time for us to make this in Taiwan? And it never happened. How's that? Why are you actually here today, still driving on with that philosophy?
Stubbornness has got a lot to do with it, but also a desire to stick to the product that was absolutely the thing that kept Pashley true to itself, and that is the products that everybody knows Pashley for at the moment, currently, which are the traditional type of product, particularly ladies and gents, heritage type products. That product has actually kept us going throughout some very tough times. The business has been into some quite interesting fringes. The business was involved quite heavily in the BMX market when BMX was actually quite fashionable, but that waned. And now Pashley has managed to ride the wave of fashion that's occupied by some quite premium products that it produces. We've got some very famous people riding our products because of the look and the particular style of the product, and that's been, I think, one of the things that has kept Pashley going. The fact that we've been very careful to be distinctively different with all of our products.
And of course, you're more than just a fashion brand, and you're more than just a history brand. You've got very contemporary products, and that's always a bit of a conflict, isn't it? How do you be the most advanced, the most contemporary, offering technical excellence, but at the same time not lose that tradition that's the foundation for your brand? How do you bring those things together?
Yes, for many years Pashley was supplying bicycles to Royal Mail, and these products are by no means a fashion product. They're a very hard-wearing, durable product. But again, Pashley were manufacturing those in this factory. That part of our business, the carrier cycle business, is very important to us. And we see it as a quite a burgeoning, growing sector for us, because of delivery business is now actually actively moving away from vehicles, petrol-driven vehicles, and going into bicycles or tricycles and electric tricycles, which we're now developing for a number of the last mile deliverers in the UK.
So can you give us a little bit of some of the sort of basic stats about your business? You employ about 70 people, is that right?
It's about 50 actually.
50 people, and you produce about how many bikes a year is it?
About 10,000 bikes.
And of that, what proportion is going to the consumer market?
It's about 75% to the consumer market, and we export about 45%.
And you in that consumer market, you have two brands, don't you? Two of the three British-made bicycle brands today.
Oh, well, if you include Moulton,
Yes.
I'd probably add another couple of thousand to that.
Right.
The Moulton product is made on a different site to here. Although we do produce some of the entry-level product for Moulton. When I say entry level, that is £1,000 or more, because that product sells for up to £16,000 at retail for one bicycle.
Yes.
And those products are made in Bradford on Avon.
And export has been a growing part of your business, hasn't it, over the last decade? So that from, I think, a small percentage of sales a decade ago, now you're exporting almost half of your total output. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct. And we export to almost 50 countries around the world now. Be they distributors or small outlets for retail, but the product that we sell is loved around the world.
Well, one of the things we've been discussing is that issue of how a product, a specialist premium product, is loved around the world, and the challenges of sourcing the parts that go into making that product. So for both of you, you manufacture all of your product in the UK, you bring that product pretty much entirely together. You have a local first sourcing policy. We've talked a little bit about how in Britain so much of the supply chain has been outsourced now offshore, but actually in the quest for great quality that is required in a specialist premium product, that this need to control, have timely sourcing, not mass volume of stock in on one's premises. So how you've been looking at that supply chain very closely. Can you both tell me a little bit about how you're tackling that in your business?
For Pashley, if we could buy everything locally, we would. Unfortunately, some products that we need are not available either in the UK or Europe or Near East, but we have to go to the Far East for them. Those are the products that have the longest lead time and generally the ones that we have to hold the most inventory for. So we found that buying locally, maybe even at some premium, enables us to be a lot more flexible and a lot fleeter of foot, because we can actually buy smaller quantities a lot quicker. Now, there would be a massive advantage for us if some of that came back to the UK or Europe, and there are some small signs of it, but it isn't a massive change for some of the core products of the bicycle. There are some small boutique things that are being now manufactured in the UK, but not everything that we need. Buying large quantities from a market which is perhaps 6 weeks away by sea, on lead times of more than 4 or 5 months, can be frightening in terms of opening the back of the container up and seeing what you've really got.
And because you're a niche specialist manufacturer, you're never going to be a huge part of somebody else's business. So if you're buying from some mass producer in China, they're not going to be terribly respectful of your delivery requirements. If it suits them to ignore you, they probably will. But you could be very important to a local component manufacturer.
Quite so.
And they'll be very keen to look after you, which improves the service you get and the service you can give to your customers. Is that part of your philosophy?
Absolutely. We have as you've said, Beverley, a local first sourcing policy. So it's local, West Midlands, England, UK, then Europe, and only then do we start looking a bit further afield. And as I said, if we could buy everything locally, we absolutely would.
And is there more? Do you think there's something more in policy terms we could be doing in terms of this onshoring? It feels like an entrepreneurial opportunity. You know, we talk about Startup Britain. Is there more we could be doing in that respect?
It's difficult because, as you've said earlier, we are one of very few companies that are actually manufacturing bicycles in the UK. So there isn't a huge demand for original equipment manufactured parts for the UK. In order for that to happen, you would need much more manufacturing to happen in the UK, and I can't see any mass market manufacturing coming back soon. It would take a massive change in the Far East. And
what do you think is the greatest threat to you as a UK manufacturer with that philosophy? We want to stay in the UK, we want to keep it going here. What's the threat to you?
I think one of the things that we face all the time is we work very hard to produce unique, distinctive design, and then somebody takes the quick route of copying what we do and sourcing it from the Far East. And we find that very frustrating, of course. So we have to keep ourselves very fleet of foot and make sure that we constantly change things. But we are capable of doing that because we have our own paint plant here, we have our own fabrication here. If I need to make a sample for a customer, I could do it in a few days. If I have to get it from China, it could take a month. So we do have massive advantages on flexibility and rapid and speed of development here.
Do you get involved with intellectual property rights at all, patents and copyrights?
We do, where we can, develop product that we can fit to our bicycles that make them unique. We've got a number of things at the moment that we're developing that we can patent, and it is a key issue for us. However, getting into extensive lawsuits with a Chinese company is almost something that you want to hold your head about and not think about. But it does. There is some protection involved, and we're very careful about our branding, and we will chase any
You protect
branding.
yourself in main markets, if
We
not
can.
perhaps in the Far East.
Yes, absolutely. Yes.
Well, one of the skills that you've been talking about there is the design skills, and I know that you have got collaborative partnerships with some universities. Could you tell us a little bit about how you've been recruiting design talent, how you work with the universities, and how importantly you regard those relationships?
I've been actually quite surprised with Pashley how such a small business has got quite a lot of support from local universities. In my previous business, there were very little connections, but in Pashley we are quite closely connected to Birmingham and Warwick universities, and we're doing a lot of work with them, both on market segmentation and penetration, and on manufacturing technology.
And well, certainly at Birmingham City University, we've been delighted that you've been able to recruit and employ some of our graduate designers, and that they've been able to work very quickly on new bicycle aspects of design and accessories, because obviously accessories has been a growing market. One of the things we were talking about prior to our discussion here was the importance of the brand, was the importance of the relationship with both of your sets of customers, and how you're presently largely sold through distributors worldwide, and that is a challenge in terms of building a growing relationship with your international customer base. Can you tell us a little bit about how you are promoting the brand, and what aspects are you using to develop the relationship with the customer?
We're very careful about our use of the brand, and we see the brand as absolutely key in our relationship with distributors. Some of our distributors are better than others, of course. Some of our distributors are very careful to make sure that all of the guidelines we give them are quite stuck to very closely.
Rigorous.
Others,
Yes.
we have to remind quite often. We put branding on bicycles, and we like to see our bicycles presented in a quite a unique way. But unfortunately, we're not in total control of every distributor around the world, as we've got at least 50 in 50 different countries. So whenever we can, we like to remind them about branding, about how the product is sold, about our relationship with the customer. We often get customers from other markets contacting us directly to ask technical or interesting questions, because the product's been around for a long time and there are a number of variants, and we need to keep our technical expertise on how we would fit a certain wheel or a certain tyre type to a particular rim. So each of our bicycles is uniquely numbered, and we can tell the consumer when it was actually made, way back to earlier than the 1950s at this stage.
And Simon, is that something that you have a challenge with, getting the dialogue with the ultimate customer, the consumer, when you're sold through distributors around the world?
It's always a difficult problem. If you're in the hands of the distributors, you never know what they're telling customers. And whilst one attempts to educate them and hope that it is always correct, decent, fair, reasonable and honest, etc., you never quite know. There's a huge difference between our two products. Ours requires no after-sales service, whereas clearly a bicycle is always going to have. It's a mechanical thing, it has moving parts, and these days sometimes it's an electric thing as well. So that's a huge difference. So it's probably easier for us to go direct to consumers than for Pashley's to do that. But I'm very interested. Do you have a skills problem? See, if you'd have asked me, as I asked you a little while ago, what's the biggest threat? For me, one of the big threats is skills, not necessarily in design. We have some great universities around us who can provide very talented students. My problem is finding a basic solderer, someone with the day-to-day skills of, how do you actually get that wheel on the bike?
We've had exactly the same problems. It's almost unique, the process that our product is fabricated. We use brazing, not welding, in the majority of our products. Brazing means that we have lugs for our bicycles. Those are the things that you see where the bikes are joined.
The joints,
and it's a much more gentle process than welding. And basically, brazing is not necessarily something that people are terribly skilled at in areas other than bicycles. So we've recently recruited specialist frame builders, people who are independently building their own frames, bicycle frames, and we've brought those into the business because we're keen to develop our skill base and improve our range into some of these specialist frame areas.
And how do you keep transferring the knowledge? I'm sure there will be little secrets of the trade, things that have been found out about bicycle manufacturing over time that a new entrant to the market wouldn't necessarily know.
Yeah.
And you've got the problem of transferring that over generations. You've been around since the 20s. How do you do that?
One of the things that I noticed in the business was that a lot of the knowledge transfer in this business was all personal, interpersonal, rather than documented. We've got a number of people that have been here many, many years who've built up enormous skills, who retire and leave the business, and we find it very difficult to transfer those skills. So we're embarking on quite an extensive program now of breaking each task down and documenting each process task so that we don't forget it. You're right, there are quite unique things that you would do in fabrication of a bicycle that would be lost. And we make some very complicated bicycles that would be lost if our senior brazer retired tomorrow. Hence the fabrication library that we're trying to build up now. It's going to take us a long time to do that.
And do you find as well in the fashion aspect, certainly this is something I notice, you suddenly find people wanting again product styles and designs that you last made in, say, the 1930s. And because we have a corporate memory that goes back that long, we can actually use knowledge from that era to inform today's manufacturing. Is that the same for you guys?
Yeah, I think the style and look of the product for Pashley is really near the top of our product attributes. And we have stayed true to a look which really is quite unique in the business. And we have developed some product that hark back to product that was made in the 40s and 50s, even some in the 20s and 30s, and given them a little bit of a contemporary spin. And they've been very, very popular. We've now spun off a huge group of people called the Governor's Assembly, which as a result from a bicycle that we've developed called the Governor. The Governor was a bicycle based around what was a 1920s path racer with drop handlebars and some very basic kit on. But we've now got a group of people that meet regularly on bicycles that they've bought from us, and call themselves the Governor's Assembly. And it's heartwarming to see it. It really is.
How very interesting. I mean, I think what really strikes me as particularly interesting in the discussion is that so many of the assets that you rely on as absolutely critical for your competitiveness are intangible assets, like the knowledge that's captured in the minds of the people working here. But also we talked a little bit about the importance of the asset of the English brand itself, and that in your marketing you're increasingly using the Made in England as a set of words around the brand, and obviously the Union Jack flag. Tell us how important that is with your customers in general, that whole Made in England ethos.
We have a little strapline that we use quite regularly, and it's on our literature, which is different by design and distinctive by nature. We like to keep our product quite separate, quite distinctive. So people can look at a product and say, even without looking at the branding, oh, that's a Pashley. Yes. And that's one attribute, but it's very difficult to do. But the one thing that very few people can say about their product, certainly a bicycle at the moment, is that it's made in England. And I mean properly made in England, not simply have the sticker put on or assembled. We actually make it from raw tube upwards. And so we're very careful about adding this. And when these are in store, these are all lined up, and it's obvious that product is distinctive and made in England, and we see that as something that's quite important to us as a business.
Yes. Well, thank you very much indeed for your time today. Thank you, Simon Topman, for joining us, and we look forward to seeing many new product launches and continuing success of Pashley Cycles.
Thank you.